What's going on, everybody? Fedor here from 3D Print SOS. Welcome back to the channel. Today we finally wrap up the season 1 of the direct drive battle that we featured here on this channel. There's a playlist down on my channel that you can watch a few videos of direct drive machines. They have been coming through here for review, and I did notice that a bunch of manufacturers are focusing on direct drive machines. So while they're here and I'm reviewing them, I figured it would be a good idea to put them against each other, see what companies are focusing on. Is there something they're all focusing on? Maybe one company got something right and one company didn't. I thought it'd be fun to kind of put them against each other and give them a point value at the end. In this episode, we're going to go ahead and do just that. What I'm going to do is I'm going to put markers down below in the video, kind of like bookmarks, so you can get through whichever section. If you don't want to hear me talking right now, just go to the next section or to whichever one you see fit. Go to the end, see the score. Hey, I'm trying to make these videos useful for you. And there's actually two that are on here that I want to mention that weren't a part of the videos that are labeled Season 1 or Direct Drive Battle. And I had them in videos on this channel, but I didn't put them a part of the season. One was the Fokoos Odin 5. That machine was a really early machine. I still have it back here. I still use it. It's a really great machine, and I think it deserves a spot in this season 1 finale. That's why it's in here, and you can check out the video of that. It should be popping up here. It was a bit of an early video on the channel. The other one that wasn't included specifically with the title of Direct Drive Battle was the Mingda Magician Max. That's also sitting behind me. That is also a great machine, and I do think, even though it is essentially just a Magician X that's larger with a higher price point, I do think it brings its own values to the mix, and I thought it would be fun to be on here. So the goal of this entire thing is for us to get a score based on a bunch of different categories, and you'll see them above as I reveal them. And then after that score, we're going to take the score, we're going to relate it directly to the price point of the machine, and we're going to do some troll math to get the cost to performance ratio. And that's the goal. I kind of want to see which one of these things I can recommend based on the things that I think that are important for 3D printers. So let's just jump right in and start off with the first category, and that's going to be price. Now, I do want to mention that price is a tough one because price constantly changes. It is always in flux. And if you guys know anything about selling on Amazon, you can put a low price and you can put a high price on your item. And Amazon kind of fits it into where it needs to be, and that's how they can have some sales happen. They can sell your item at the low price at one point and then have a sale and then sell it on a high point when people are buying that product. There's also third-party applications that attach to Amazon that kind of do that for you as well. They always keep your price in flux so that you get the most sales out of your price. So just keep in mind, it's always tough to pinpoint one price. They're going to be a little bit higher, they're going to be a little bit lower at some point, but these are just whenever I pulled them. So one of the things you might notice is there's two things I want to kind of call out in colors. One is the Voxelab Aquila S2 is yellow, and that's because I did a poll on the community tab, and you guys by far voted the S2 being your favorite machine. So I wanted to highlight it. That's going to be the crowd favorite. So we'll be talking about that. The other thing is there's a background color of green, and that's going to be the leader in the category. So for example, price, if you look down this row or column rather, we have the Fokoos Odin winning the category with $290 as the MSRP. Under $300, great price point for a 3D printer, especially a direct drive machine. Then going down, we have a little bit above $300 at $320 for the Mingda Magician. Actually a great price for the amount of things that you get in that machine. Then if you want to go big, we have $480 for the Mingda Magician Max. Then we have the crowd favorite sitting at $300. Not too much, not too little. I think it's a really fair price for a direct drive machine, especially one that focuses on higher temperatures. We'll get into that a little bit more. The Creality Ender 3 S1 easily became one of my easiest printers to recommend. It's really great out of the box if you can afford $380 or around there for your machine. In fact, if you have around there for your first machine, I would say that this is one of the best first machines to get. Not only is it great out of the box, it hasn't needed anything else. It has always performed, and it's just a great value, and especially because it's made by Creality. There's a lot of aftermarket, there's a lot of replacement. Good machine for $380. Then one of my personal favorites, definitely a keeper back here. I use it pretty much constantly. One of my most used machines, the Biqu BX at $450. Definitely a steep price point, and it is the most expensive on our list here, but that's because it by far has the most features and comes with the most stuff. And you know, we'll talk about it as we go here. So yeah, a high price point, definitely a lot more than $290. And finally, last but definitely not least, quickly becoming one of my favorite machines, the Kywoo3D Tycoon. It was a great stout machine. Check out that video for sure. And it comes in at $420. And it is right back there. And I have been using it for PTG and TPU and loving it. All right, the first category outside of price is the assembly. So what we're going to do is all these categories are going to go from 1 to 10 points, depending on the text that's underneath the category. For example, assembly, going from hard, 1 point, easy, 10 points. So let's start at the Fokoos Odin 5. That's going to get the best score of 10. And as you can see, there's a little explanation above the 10 at very easy. So the assembly, very easy, 10 points. Easily one of the easiest machines that I've assembled. The only one that's come close or equal to is the Kywoo3D Tycoon. That only had 4 bolts. The Fokoos Odin was unfolded and then had 2 bolts, and that was the only assembly. If you look, the rest was very easy and easy assemblies. They're all easy to put together, with the hardest one on here being the crowd favorite, the Aquila S2, but that still got an average score of 5. And the reason for that is well, the base is assembled, but it's mostly disassembled. You kind of have to put it together. I don't necessarily think that that's a bad thing. It's nice to get a machine to kind of learn to put it together. That could be fun for a lot of people. I know people like getting kits. So is the assembly easy? Well, it's average on that one out of 5, but it's definitely not impossible or hard. Keep that in mind. All right, let's move right along to the next section, ease of use. So 1 point would be hard, and 10 would be easy. So how hard is this thing to use? I know a lot of beginners ask that question. They even wonder that question if they can't find it online. And here we put it into categories. So let's start at the top with the Fokoos, getting an 8 for easy use. The menus are simple and clean. The profiles are easy to set up. It has a lot of support. It gets an 8 for easy. The Mingda Magician X is actually top of the class here with a 9. And as you'll see, the Mingda Magician Max is going to mirror it in a lot of sections except for a few here. But it is also very easy in terms of use. You don't have to do much to set it up. You barely have to do anything. Just put it together essentially. And the rest is done for you. There's profiles in Cura. You don't have to level the machine. It does it for you. It is very easy to use. Then once again, with an average score of 5, we have the Voxelab Aquila S2. Not bad, not the best. Average 5. Average is not horrible. All right, we're going with the Creality Ender 3 next, and that gets an easy 8. So far, a pretty solid machine just based on price, assembly, and ease of use, huh? All right, the Biqu BX gets a hard, and that it definitely earns that score. The menus are vast. There's a lot you can do. There's a lot of different things you can set up. You can get yourself in trouble because of those settings, but that's actually, it's also its strength. If you know what all those settings are, and you kind of have an advanced understanding of printers, like I said, it's one of my favorite machines because of that. You can do anything that you'd want with it, but because of that, it's definitely hard to use. And following that one, the Kywoo3D Tycoon gets an average of 5. Not hard, not easy, just an average 5. The same score as the Voxelab Aquila S2. All right, let's move on to the next category, the build quality. So for build quality, we are getting a 1 for low and a high for 10, or 10 for high. All right, the Fokoos gets a high build quality score of 8, while the Mingda Magician gets a lots of plastic score of 6. And it's true, it is a lot of plastic. And as if you can look below it here to the Mingda Magician Max, the body of it is so large, and even that is just hollow plastic. And it doesn't necessarily feel good, if that makes sense. The machine is perfectly fine. There's nothing wrong with the way that it's built. In fact, some of the stuff is really cool. It's unique. It's artsy in a way, but it definitely doesn't necessarily feel high quality. Whereas if we just jump down towards the bottom here, there's a three-way tie for high with a point value of 9 for the Creality Ender 3 S1, the Biqu BX, and the Kywoo3D. I think all three of those machines have a really high build quality, and that's why they got that score. Just to mention, as usual, the Voxelab Aquila S2 is getting an average score of 6. It is a standard Ender style machine. However, it has a direct drive and its own unique design for the hot end, and it's getting an average score there. All right, let's go to the next category, printable materials. So this is a unique category, I know, and I have my reasons for doing it this way, because I kind of wanted to see where these companies are doing this and how they're marketing this. And it looks like the majority are going with a pretty standard highest temperature of 260 degrees. So that's going to be our low end. If your machine is saying 260 degrees, that's going to get a 1. It's a standard score. But if it's going to go above and beyond, for example, there is a clear winner here by a mile, the Voxelab Aquila S2. It goes all the way up to 300, which means we automatically have a vast majority or a much more vast opportunity to print different materials: nylon, ABS, carbon fiber filled materials, etc., etc. So the Voxelab Aquila S2 running away with a 10 in this category, with a 300 max on the hot end. So for printable materials, if that's something that you need in a machine, out of these, the Voxelab S2 actually takes the cake. If you are okay with printing things like TPU, PETG at the high level, and then PLA, well, most people print with just those three, and that's totally fine. But in this case, that's going to get a 1 for being the bare minimum. All right, the next category we have is print speed. Now, keep in mind, I know these are all Cartesian machines. There's no XY style machines on here. So the speed is going to be really similar. I'm comparing them to each other. Okay, there's going to be machines that are far faster than even the fastest one here. So just keep that in mind. So let's look at the winner. At the very top, we have the Fokoos Odin F5. I'm constantly printing between 80 and 120 millimeters per second on that machine, so it is going to get the high score here at 8. Then we have the Mingda Magician with an average score of 5, followed by the Magician Max. It prints at about the same speed, followed by a 4-way tie for an average between 60 and 80 millimeters per second, and that is the Voxelab Aquila, the Creality Ender 3S1, Biqu BX, and the Tycoon, getting a 4-way tie with 6 points. So that's an easy one to talk about. Print speed, if you want to print speed, print a little bit faster on this one. The Fokoos Odin has this really stout chassis. Everything is tight, close together, and in my personal opinion, that thing is great at printing fast, especially with a 0.6 millimeter nozzle. All right, next we have is build area. How much of that usable space on these machines can you use? Let's take a look here at this section, and I'll put the sizes above the scores here. Let's look at the winner. Clear winner here is the Mingda Magician Max with 320 by 320 by 400. Now that is a really large machine. You might not have the space for that, but essentially if you did buy that machine, you can print small things, medium things, and large things. So it gets an 8 out of 10 in this particular category. If we look at the top here, the Fokoos Odin and the Magician X get the lowest scores in the category with 4, and that's because they're at a average a size of 235 by 235, and actually the Fokoos Odin gets a little bit of a lower height at 250, whereas the Magician can go to a little bit higher, 260. Not very critical. You can still print tons of things at the size, but comparing them against each other, we have other sizes, like for example, let's take a look at some of the more average scores, where the Creality Ender 3 is at a 220 size, so about the same. However, its height is 270, so we can go a little bit higher there. So he gets a slightly larger score than a 4. Same with the Kywoo Tycoon. At a 5, it goes to 240. So that one is cubed. So as you can see, some of those sizes can be unique to what you might need to print. Okay, next up we have the feature set. So it's going to get a 1 for not very many features, and it's going to get a 10 for tons of features. Alright, so let's take a look at the category winner. We're going definitely to the Biqu BX with a 9, and the reason for is it has all the things. The only other thing I could possibly think of is something like Clipper or having a Raspberry Pi built in. Other than that, that machine quite literally comes with everything that you might want in a 3D printer of this form factor, of this size. Anything from auto bed leveling to a really unique bed surface with a flexible PI sheet that's a really unique thickness. In my personal opinion, it's easy to flex, so on and so forth. The only thing that's really missing, in my personal opinion, is an all-metal hot end. You can get it for around $10 even from Biqu themselves, but for some reason, with everything else that they included, they didn't include that in the machine, and that could have been a 10 for that machine in this category. Let's go and take a look at the bottom. It looks like all these machines are pretty well equipped. The Voxelab Aquila S2 getting a pretty typical average score. It seems like that's kind of what it's good at. It's good at doing everything on an average pace, and that makes for a great machine. But in this case, it's not going to win the feature standpoint. All right, let's go to the bottom here. The Fokoos Odin actually has the least amount with a score of 5, and it has a decent feature set. Now, the Odin is quiet. It doesn't have loud steppers. It has a small touchscreen, and the touchscreen is actually quite decent. And that's why it gets a score of 5. It definitely is mechanical. It doesn't have auto bed leveling, for example, but if you want a simpler machine, that's going to be the one to get there. And if you want something that has all of the features, the Biqu BX is going to be the winner in that category. All right, let's move on to the unique feature of the machine. So some of these features are going to be a bit gimmicky. Some of them are going to be very useful, but how do you stand out in a sea of clones? That's trying to have some kind of unique feature. A good example of that is the Biqu BX. It looks like a lot of other machines, however, it has this giant screen. And the giant screen is actually amazing to use along with their menus. And for that, it gets an 8 out of 10. For example, another example, the Kywoo Tycoon gets a thick score of 8. And that's because it is extremely robust. That's its kind of niche. It's not a flippy floppy machine. It almost feels industrial in a way. And if you like that kind of thing, that's definitely the machine to go for there. The Voxelab S2 gets a really low score here because if you look down the line at all the things that it's good at, and then you compare it to the 300 price point, the machine starts to make a lot more sense at the low price point of $300. And then let's mention the middle of the road. We have the Fokoos Odin with a 5 and the Creality Ender 3 with a 5. The unique feature on the Ender 3 S1 is the Sprite extruder, which is definitely a great extruder. You can even buy those things separately at this point. There's things I like, there's things I don't. It has kind of ribbon cables, so you're not necessarily modifying that portion of it, the cabling of it. However, it still uses somewhat standard components on the actual Sprite extruder itself, just in a different orientation. One of the downsides of it is it's hard to see the nozzle, but you can always kind of look from the side. It's just nitpicking at this point. It definitely gets an average score, and its unique feature is the sprite extruder. And then back to the Fokoos with a 5, it gets a 5 because of its form factor and its hot end. It also has a similarly unique hot end design, and it's I guess when you compare it directly to all the other machines, it doesn't make it so unique when all the other machines also have direct drive extruders. But I remember at the time when it came out, that was definitely its unique feature. All right, let's move right along to the out-of-box print. And I put this here because most of the things that I do aren't necessarily deep dive reviews. I don't get the chance to have these machines very long because I'm trying to kind of check out more and more, see what I can recommend. So in the time that I have them, one of the most important things that I can talk about is their out-of-the-box performance, out-of-the-box prints. So if the prints are okay, they're going to get 1. Or if they're poor, they're going to get 1. If they're amazing out of the box, they're going to get a 10. And it looks like the winner here is a tie between the Creality Ender 3 S1 and the Biqu BX. Both those machines had almost indistinguishable prints, and they were very high quality. It looks like the lowest here was the Aquila S2, and I'll talk about why in a second, and the Fokoos Odin. The Fokoos Odin and the Aquila I both had kind of issues with. The Fokoos Odin, I had a problem out of the box where my nozzle was actually somewhat stripped in the hot end, and that's just the manufacturer's defect that happens. I've had a bunch of things that I unbox on this channel have slight defects, but essentially it had a metallic clog. And I mentioned it to Fokoos. They instantly shipped me a new one. I put it in, and I've had 0 issues since. But because of that, I didn't get amazing out-of-the-box prints. I had an issue. And with the Voxelab Aquila S2, I also had something similar, except they marketed the printer for really high temperatures, but I couldn't print some of the high temperature materials that came with it without a lot of tweaking. I couldn't get them perfectly out of the box. They just required a little bit more effort to do. So for that particular category, it's going to get an average or an okay rating of 5. All right, let's move on to upgradability. All right, as far as upgrades go, we have 2 kind of runaways here. The Biqu BX, infinitely upgradable, infinitely modifiable, not only because of its form factor, but because of the way that they use extrusions in a very typical manner. You can kind of do whatever you want in this thing. You can upgrade it to anything, and that's why I really like the machine for sure. Also, the Kywoo3D Tycoon in a different way. It has linear rods, linear rails, but all that system, and even if you go on their website, you can also infinitely upgrade that thing to whatever you want. It's both of those machines get a very high upgradability. On the low end of that, the Mingda machines, both of them get a low score of 2, and that's because a lot of their form factor is proprietary. And that's for good reason. They focus on ease of use. Both of those machines should be, you should be able to assemble it out of the box, hit level, and then just start printing. And that's why they're not necessarily the best to upgrade. They don't even have a lower chassis that you can modify. I mean, I guess everything is modifiable with a 3D printer. But at the end of the day, it doesn't lend itself to modifications as well as something like the Biqu BX, for example. Moving right along to the last category before we get to the score, and that's reliability. Did I have any problems? Let's kind of talk about this one. So there is another 2-way tie between the Fokoos Odin, that gets a workhorse score of 10, and then the Creality Ender 3 S1 that gets a high score of 10. Both those machines have been absolutely reliable. I haven't had to do anything to get prints out of them, and I've been using both of them about an equal amount, and they have just been extremely easy, extremely reliable. I know I can always use those machines to print. I've never needed to re-level them once they're leveled, so on and so forth. They get a high score of 10. Let's keep going downward here. We have another two-way tie for second place at 9 points with the Biqu BX and the Kywoo3D Tycoon. Both of these machines I have been using lately, almost back to back for weeks at a time, both printing PETG and TPU, and both of them I've had very little. Once I got them printing the way that I liked, I just loaded up into Cura, I hit slice, I put the card in there, I hit print, and I don't even think about both of those machines. So they also get a level 9. The reason why they don't get a 10 is because I did have to make some slight tweaks to get them to there, whereas the Ender 3 S1 and the Fokoos Odin required very little of my actual input to stay reliable, which is really nice. And then for the lowest scores, which aren't bad scores at all, at 7, there's a three-way tie for both the Mingda machines and the Voxelab S2, which is actually going a little bit above the average. However, I did have a little bit of clogging. One thing I do want to mention is one of the weakest points of the Mingda machines, even though they're both pretty good, is that the glass bed is just too sticky on both of them. One's a smaller size, one's a larger size, but on both of them I equally had a hard time taking prints off of the glass bed. But other than that, absolutely solid. So I tried to kind of get through these categories as fast as I could. You know, this is up on the screen. You can always pause and take a look at the numbers yourself, you know, with reasoning behind everything that I've put on here is right on there, right above the score. But essentially, this is what we're here for. Let's add those up. And here we go. We have a two-way tie, and maybe you're not surprised, maybe you are, but in terms of just score based on these numbers, based on the categories that I made, in my personal opinion, I think the Biqu BX and the Kywoo3D Tycoon are both equally amazing machines with a score of 78. Let's kind of talk about some of the other machines. The lowest score out of this whole thing is the Voxelab Aquila S2. It looks like it has been a pretty consistent average with just stealing the category of printable materials, and I think that's kind of the focus of the machine, right? It's a standard form factor, it has one unique thing, and it focuses on high temperatures. And because of that, its price point is really budget friendly at $300. And I think in the next category, I think some of you guys are going to be surprised at how all of this plays a role. There is a two-way tie between the Mingda Magician Max and the Fokoos Odin 5, even though those two are very, very different machines. One is really mechanical and kind of small and tight, and one is just large, can do a lot, and has a lot of different features. But at the end of the day, they both came out with a score of 68. So now let's go to the final score and kind of the whole finale of the entire season 1 of the direct drive battle. In my personal opinion, this is the most important category, and that's the cost to performance ratio. So the winner of the whole thing of the cost to performance is actually really surprising to me, and that's the Fokoos Odin 5 F3. And it gets a score of 2.34 for the cost to performance. And even though it got a 68 and not a whopping 78, based on its price point at $290, we're getting the highest score of 2.34. And if we raise the price, if I click into here and I change the price to 300, I know you're not going to be able to see that on the screen, it goes down to 227. I mean, it goes down to 2.27, so it's still at the top of the pack. And as you'll see, if you get some of those other machines on sale, those scores hop up dramatically for some of the other machines. So the one of the biggest surprises, I guess, is that both the Mingda Magician X and the Voxelab Aquila S2 are actually really close with the scores of 2 and 2.03, and we could just say those are both 2. So the Mingda Magician has a price point of 320. The Voxelab Aquila S2 has a price of 300. So based on what you're into, those are both equally great machines to get if you're looking for the most performance for your dollar. However, take a look at the two winners at the bottom there, the 78 scores. The Biqu BX and the Kywoo Tycoon, based on their price, they're actually at somewhat towards the bottom with a 1.86 and a 1.73 cost to performance score. So at some point, you're investing money into something else outside of performance if all you're looking for is to maximize your performance for the least amount of money to pay. So just something to note, that if you want all of the features, if you want all of the things, you are just going to have to pay for them. And that kind of proves itself in this finale and in the cost to performance ratio. So there you go, guys. You can see my thinking going from left to right here, the points added up, how I got to the cost to performance ratio, and our winner, the Fokoos Odin 5 F3, is the winner of the Season 1 of our direct drive battle. I think that is an awesome machine. It is a mechanical machine, but because of that, it stays true, it stays simple, and because of that, it stays affordable. And also because of that, that's why it got the best score on Season 1. So, guys, if you liked this, please go ahead and leave me a comment and let me know what you would change for Season 2, because I do still have a ton of machines coming through, and they're all direct drives, so we might as well do a direct drive battle too. What do you guys want to see? Do you guys want to see different scoring? Would you do something differently? Obviously, you and I are going to differ in opinions. I'm still going to probably end up doing it my way to some degree, but this, in my personal opinion, based on the things I know and based on the things I like, these are the scores that these printers received. So there you go, guys. If you enjoyed this content, definitely think about joining the Patreon to support this channel. Please consider joining us on YouTube, and also join our community on Discord. We just crossed the 1,000 member mark in there, and it's so nice to just join the community, talk to like-minded people, share different prints, troubleshoot our machines, so on and so forth. So check out those things for the channel. Okay, guys, I hope you enjoyed it, and I think that's all for me today. As always, I'll see you all in the comments. Later.